We are sorry. We are sorry. Mami anak.
An emotional day in Arctic Bay, Nunavut today, as Gary Ananda Sangri, the Minister of Crown, Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, delivered a long-awaited apology, apologizing on behalf of the federal government for the relocation of Inuit to Dundas Harbor nearly a century ago. Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Shannon Scott. We'll have more for you on that apology shortly coming up on Northbeat. But first, we're turning our attention to the Northwest Territories, where the federal government's decision to narrow the criteria of what is eligible for Jordan's principal funding is creating uncertainty in Northwest Territories schools. In that territory, a majority of educational assistants are funded through the program. Avery Zingle has that story.
The Northwest Territories Education Department says it's still working with education leaders to determine the impact of changes to Jordan's principal. Education Minister Caitlin Cleveland will raise those concerns in a meeting with Federal Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu. Federal government announced it would no longer fund school-related requests unless they are linked to the specific health, social, or educational need of a First Nations child. Every year since 2021, Jordan's principal paid for more than 200 education assistants in the Northwest Territories. That's 2/3 of all the support assistants in the Northwest Territories. Northwest Territories Teachers Association President Rita Mueller says classroom assistants are essential. They give one-on-one class support to kids, and they deliver curriculum in multi-grade classrooms.
So we have a teacher responsible for 2, 3, sometimes 4 grade levels in one classroom. Those caring adults that are in schools focused on helping children, they're invaluable.
Mueller says Jordan's principal enabled schools to hire more of these support assistants, and any reduction will be felt in the schools.
I really certainly hope there will not be any drastic changes to how the federal government is funding these Jordan Principal applications in the Northwest Territories. We need that continued support. Our children deserve those services.
Jordan's principal stems from a 2007 Canadian Human Rights Tribunal complaint. It focuses on the death of 5-year-old Jordan River Anderson, a boy with multiple disabilities. The ruling established a child-first principle to ensure timely access to care, education, and health care support. That means the government of First Contact pays for the immediate needs of a First Nations child, and then governments can later decide who should pay. A spokesperson for Indigenous Services Canada said since January, the government has nearly doubled the percentage of requests it denies. Overall, there are 16 pending requests for additional educational assistance in the Northwest Territories, 4 in the Yukon, and none in Nunavut. Avery Zingle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
We're returning now to our top story and the federal apology delivered today in Arctic Bay. It was given to descendants of some of the relocatees, those who were moved to Dundas Harbor almost 100 years ago. The survivors have been pushing for years to hear these words. The CBC's Eli Kaksatuktaksu is in Arctic Bay for the apology.
Thank you, Shannon. Yes, today was a very interesting day here in Arctic Bay, Nunavut. We got to witness this beautiful celebration that was a long time wait and a long time work coming from elders to see a period of this dot. So the inclusiveness was very bright here in the community. So the elders got to explain of what was going on towards of how they wanted to see the relocation apology take place in the community of Arctic Bay. So there was strong words being given from the elders that were presenting to the audience to who came here to witness this program. So we had couple of elders I can mention, Isaac Shuyuk, who was the main lead against this apology, and also collaborating with other elders such as Laisha Kavavok from Arctic Bay, and also Aimo Makbaruk from originally Arctic Bay but now living in Nekaluit. So we got to experience how they wanted to see this apology, and it was a very good day for them to witness an apology, and the apology came directly from the federal government Minister for Indigenous Crown Relations and Northern Affairs, Gary and Anna Sangare. So we got to witness, and they got to sign a special paper this afternoon. And continuing on during the day, we had many speeches given from different Inuit organizations such as QIA, NTI, and more. And also we got to hear from the community members of how they are hearing towards this story. And it has been a really amazing experience during this 10-year time as CBC North is still in Arctic Bay.
That's the CBC's Eli Kakasuktaktu in Arctic Bay. Of course, he was there as the federal government delivered an apology for the relocation of Inuit to Dundas Harbour. For the record, here is some of Minister Ananda Sangare delivering today's apology.
The Government of Canada took advantage of its dominant position over Inuit living in the Arctic and moved them to further its geopolitical goals without due regard to the desires of the relocatees or impact that the move would have on them. The relocation should not have occurred without the informed consent of those to be moved. Promises that should have been kept were broken. Families were dispersed, never to see each other again, all in the service of the unspoken intent to secure the Arctic islands to Canada.
Now, while his Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations was in Nunavut, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined other Inuit leaders in Montreal, announcing millions of dollars for conservation projects in the Eastern Arctic. It's called the SINA Agreement, and it will see $200 million from the federal government and $70 million from private donors go towards protecting 800,000 square kilometers of land and water in the Kikatani region.
With this agreement, we will protect over 3.5% more of Canada's marine area by supporting Inuit-led conservation initiatives to ensure the long-term health of northern environments. In so doing, we're also building an economy based on conservation.
The agreement proposes 3 new protected areas in the region, support for Inuit stewardship projects, and Inuit-led regional governance, and the completion of a small craft harbour in Arctic Bay. It's part of the federal government's goal to protect 30% of Canada's oceans by 2030. Well, in Yukon, the government is setting aside $850,000 in this year's budget for paid sick leave. The money would extend the paid sick leave rebate program 1 more year until March 2026. But it hinges on MLAs passing the budget. The Liberals are a minority government and require the NDP's support to get bills passed. The program reimburses employers when employees are away because of illness.
Just from a common sense perspective, when an individual can take a day, look after themselves, not go into the workplace, that's incredibly important. And I think it's just a level of respect, for humanity, being able to say, look, many of these businesses had no provisions. People were taking a day off without pay.
The rebate program covers up to 40 hours of leave per 12-month period for eligible workers. Pillay says he hopes the program also helps businesses recruit more staff. Doctors across this country say they're drowning in paperwork and administrative tasks, like writing sick notes. It's time they say could be better spent assisting patients. Now, some provinces are trying to tackle it, but doctors say there's still a ways to go. Heather Gillis reports.
A minor contagious illness lasting a few days. Doctors don't want to write sick notes for that, excusing people from work or school. They're calling for them to be eliminated.
Come on, people. These are grown-ups, and if they have a cold and they are spewing germs and they're making a good call to stay home from work, they don't need to bring those germs into my office to get a note so that you can feel better about them not coming to work.
The Canadian Medical Association estimates doctors wrote 12.5 million sick notes last year. An estimated 6.5 million Canadians don't have access to primary care. And doctors say critically examining the amount of paperwork could be one small step to curing the healthcare crisis. Some provinces are making moves to curb sick notes. In Nova Scotia, employers can't demand them unless a person's been ill for more than 5 consecutive days. In Ontario and Quebec, 3 days. And that's not the only red tape keeping doctors from more patient time.
I mean, in an average week, I'm probably spending 4 to 8 hours doing paperwork, and that's between forms. So basically, forms that are disability forms, disability tax credit forms, Canada pension forms, lawyers' reports.
After putting in a full day, you're up till 10 o'clock at night finishing paperwork. People are answering
This healthcare
emails.
researcher says electronic medical records are one thing, counterintuitively increasing the administrative burden, and they could be streamlined.
You might get a PDF from a lab with lab results, but then you got to open it, click it, save it to the right patient. So, there's all these additional steps. It's not automated.
Manitoba and Nova Scotia have struck task forces to reduce doctor red tape. Quebec has passed legislation to reduce it, and many doctors say it's just a start. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
The Northwest Territories nominee program attracts many different groups of people. Those looking to immigrate to Canada, people already here with expiring work permits, and individuals seeking permanent residency. The program started taking applications again today. Jocelyn Chappelle reports.
The NWT nominee program reopens today after being delayed in January. Applications can be submitted from now until next week. Many, though, will not be accepted. Last year had 300 open positions for the program. This year, due to federal cuts, there will be 150 positions open. 60 of those spots will be filled with 2024 applications that came in before the rules changed. This means for 2025, there's only 90 openings in the NWT. Arun Singh is the director of ECEN Immigration Services. He's heard from people impacted by the change.
Cutting down the numbers in all areas for all programs. Everyone seems very tense. They don't have any hope how they're going to maintain their status or how they will become even get the work permit so it's very stressing situation. I've heard a lot of people saying, okay, they might just leave, go back if it happens.
One of the changes the federal cuts have caused is a new 1-year requirement for applicants. Applications will also be selected at random instead of on a first-come, first-served basis. Singh says this puts employers with large numbers of employees in a tough spot, along with those who may be just under the year requirement. Kate Reed is the MLA for Great Slave. She is concerned people waiting on work visa renewals and the nominee program will end up in a mountain of paperwork. The limbo state or maintained status is when a person's immigration file is being processed.
But meanwhile, the NWT cancels your driver's license and healthcare card. Adding to more frustration,
Minister of Industry Caitlin Cleveland says foreign nationals on maintained status are eligible to extend their healthcare coverage and driver's license, as long as they have valid proof of that status and complete the process with required documents. Jocelyn Chappelle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Forced and coerced sterilization of Indigenous people is still happening. The Survivors Circle for Reproductive Justice has supports available for Indigenous survivors. Join the National Registry and access up to $70,000 in healing support funds for individuals, families, and communities. The deadline to apply is March 31st. If you or someone you know has experienced forced and coerced sterilization, please call 1-877-386-0750 or visit reproductivejusticesurvivors.ca for more information.
The Kanuipita National Inuit Health Survey team is going to every community in Nunavut, speaking to Inuit about their health and wellness. And every answer will help us as Inuit determine our own priorities for a healthier future. Together, we will answer the question, Kanuipita, how are we? Find out when we're coming to your community. Learn more at qnihs.ca.
Escaping off the attitude, old man eating all my food. Don't be kind, don't be rude, just shake your boots and let it all get loose.
So Natalie, what do we know about these products that are used here in the NWT?
Yeah, I'll focus on one product in particular. It's called Liquid Concentrate 95 AMV. And following that public hearing, the Sawtooth Board sought more information from the territory. And so most of my information here is coming from documents filed on the board's registry. And the registry cites a bunch of studies on this stuff, including from the U.S. Forest Service, that talk about its impact, particularly on the water. Those studies talk about how this retardant can be pretty damaging to water ecosystems, on tadpoles, fish, and then how that can make its way up the food chain. And so in an email exchange with the board, someone with the territory's Department of Environment says the fire retardant products used in the NWT are made mostly from chemicals used in agricultural fertilizers. And so he says they're environmentally friendly and safe for use, but interestingly, he adds that even though it's not considered an environmental threat, the government does still make every effort to avoid dropping the fire retardant from air tankers into water bodies. Mike Westwick with the territory's Department of Environment has also said that along with the stuff in fertilizer, the retardants are mostly water. He told us in an email that the territory also has an extensive water monitoring network, and so that network hasn't found any concerns about elevated levels in the water of material that comes from fire retardant.
So I'm presuming here that these fire retardants are used in places outside of the NWT as well. What have we heard from other jurisdictions that use it?
Yeah, well, I spoke with some researchers who work out of the Scotty Creek Research Station in the Decho, and they talk about a fire that happened near there in 2014. It burned about half the forested area, and what the researchers have noticed is that in the area where fire retardant was used, the vegetation still hasn't grown back. Here's how one of those researchers describes it.
If you kind of think about like the burned versus the unburned portions, there's like a small section along the edge of the unburned area where the fire retardant was dropped. And you can clearly see where it was dropped because it's still there and remains visible on the trees at the site even now, which is 10 years later. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this is also the area where like hardly any vegetation is growing. The ground is like either bare or covered in like dead roots and fallen branches and twigs from the trees. It almost looks like a graveyard.
And so without the cover from that vegetation, the land is absorbing more heat, and that could have implications for a permafrost thaw. So what we're hearing is that it does seem to be having an impact.
Are there other kinds of fire retardants that could be used?
I spoke with someone in Ontario who's looking into this. There's a sort of green team that looks into more environmental alternatives for the Federal Department of National Defense. Marie Skordacki leads that team. She says what they're trying to find is a product that doesn't use something called PFAS. That's a class of chemicals that's super sticky, which makes it really effective, but also, she says, it basically sticks onto the thing forever. So for that reason, she says, the concerns those Sawtooth residents are raising are valid. There are a few products that her team is looking into as alternatives. One is something called EcoGel. That's an Ontario-made product that the company describes as being entirely plant-based and biodegradable and actually even less expensive. She says it's still a long ways away from actually being used by D&D, but she says so far it's testing well. And, she really talks about how if we know there are risks with the way we do things, why not at least try to do things better? And Westwick says that this is the kind of thing the territory is monitoring as well. He also notes, though, that not all retardants work the same in all environments. And so he says anything the territory uses needs to meet the mission.
Okay, so here in the NWT, what happens next? Has someone been to the Sawtooth to talk to people like Fred Andrew about their concerns?
Well, Andrew says that no one has been to the community to explain what's in the product and how they're used, and that's still something that he wants. And Westwick says that's something the department is happy to do. He says that the department does try to communicate with communities directly, and he says, if they drop retardants in areas that are frequented by community members, the territory does advise local leaders to avoid harvesting, for example, in those areas until the retardant has been washed away by rain or other weather. As far as next steps, the Sawtooth Board has submitted a report to the territory's Department of Environment and Climate Change. That's based on that public listening session we've been talking about. So, it includes this stuff about the fire retardant, but also lots of other details about how wildfires and climate change impact caribou. And the department has 60 days to review that report and respond. The SRRB submitted that report on January 15th, so the department could ask for an extension, but if not, we should be able to see that report and the territory's response within the next few weeks.
All right, Natalie, thank you so much for your work on this.
Thanks for having me.
Well, giving first aid in remote areas of the North can be challenging. Sometimes it can take hours or longer to get proper medical care. So now people in Inuvik are getting trained in wilderness first aid. Des Lorraine has more.
You may have a spinal injury. And you're behind
The Inuvik Youth Center offered wilderness first aid training to the community this week. The center saw a need in local first aid training, so they paid for a course and offered seats to other organizations like the daycare.
What better way to express a community environment than include the community? I do know that a lot of entities are struggling with standard first aid and getting it.
As the instructor explains, wilderness first aid trains you to help people in remote areas.
You two can just kind of be just in front of the willows. I'll go get them set up.
But a lot of times first aid is based around the idea that you live in an urban area with an ambulance that's relatively close by, right? You got to do some things, but you call 911, you get assistance. With wilderness first aid, we flip that around going, you've got a situation, there isn't anyone right now nearby to give you a hand. What do you need to know to take care of that person until help can get to you?
The Inuvik Youth Center would like to thank the Inuvik Native Band for their support this week. The organizers hope to run similar classes soon. Des Lorraine, CBC News, Inuvik.
The Western Hockey League is coming to Whitehorse. The Medicine Hat Tigers and Kelowna Rockets will play 2 preseason games at Takini Arena in September. The Tigers are, of course, Yukoner Gavin McKenna's team, but it's not clear if he'll still be on the roster this fall. The game's organizers say even if McKenna doesn't play, the games will be action-packed.
We sure hope he's playing, but regardless, we're going to see some amazing hockey. This is a preseason game, and there's going to be a lot of guys out there fighting for jobs and working hard.
Most tickets for the events will cost $35, with a handful of premium seats going for $100. Tickets go on sale tomorrow. In Nunavut, an outfitter has been nominated for an International Indigenous Tourism Award. Jonathan Grenier is an Inuk born and raised in Kujwak. He and his business partner run Ungava Polar Eco Tours with their families. He says being nominated for the new Operator Award is a huge honor.
We have been recognized in the past year through different articles and different magazines showing the uniqueness of our product. But this to be 100% Inuit owned and operated, we're very proud of.
Grenier says since the COVID-19 pandemic, more tourists are seeking ecotourism, and his company has worked to have as little environmental impact as possible. The awards are being handed out tonight in Montreal at the 2025 International Indigenous Tourism Awards. The Northern Cultural Expressions Society in Whitehorse has moved to a new home. The society's mandate is to engage First Nations youth in traditional arts. With the new location, there's potential for an artist in residence and space for outdoor carving in the summer. The CBC's Isabel Rutenbeek went to check it out.
We moved into 102 Lambert Street at the beginning of December, and we're very excited because this is the first time we've actually been able to own something for the society, and in that will create permanence for us and sustainability and allow us to continue with the programming that we've been developing for all these years. Where we're standing right now, it's a heritage cabin, and it's been around here. These cabins have existed for 70 years. We have people coming in from the street who say they remember coming and visiting their aunties who used to live here. So these are heritage cabins, and what the business was before, it was owned by Thomas and Kelly DeJagger, and they had Yukon-wide adventures. So it was through their generosity and their creative financing that we were able to secure this location. So we have a big vision for ourselves. We've been here for 20 years and we want to see ourselves here long into the future. And the way the organization has envisioned that going is that we would like to develop Yukon's first traditional arts training center here. So we do have plans, phases rather, that you'll start to see some changes. We're going to maintain the integrity of these cabins and look at developing what we have here already. So the next 5 or 6 years.
Well, that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/north. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Shannon Scott. Have a great night. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Earth is our collective home that makes us all family. As family, we strive to love and protect each other. Diversity of species is our strength. We are all connected. We survive and thrive together. We celebrate many things this season and make many choices. Taking care of our family should be the easiest. We're in this together.
One good scheme deserves another. Stay on him.
I feel we may be in for a challenging few days.
Cheers. Cheers.
$12 new records for a penny.
Sounds too good to be true.
It's not a scam. Cancel anytime. It's all in the fine print.
You're going to end up on the hook for a lot more.
You think I'm stupid? I used your name to sign up.
Alcoholics Anonymous. For more information, visit aa.org.
I was fighting losing battles with opponents disguised as friends, and coming home to a different fight that never ends. I saw no other choice. I had to leave a roof for the rain. But sometimes I wonder if there was a path with more to gain. Maybe the opportunities would have been better, and every day would take me further towards something greater.
To help create new paths for youth experiencing homelessness, the Home Depot Canada Foundation is committing $125 million by 2030.
Stream anytime,
CBC News.